Welcome to the Time to Practice podcast. This is a space where we talk about music practice, the ups and downs that young musicians go through related to practice and learning music, and how we as parents, caregivers, and music educators can support the young musicians in our lives, support ourselves, and support each other. My name is Christine Goodner. I'm a music educator, author, and podcaster who has made it my mission to talk about music practice and to support educators and families looking to make home practice more effective and to reduce conflict and frustration in the practice room. I'm glad you're here. You're listening to episode 110. And as we wrap up 2025, we are revisiting a portion of an interview with a music educator, pianist, and someone who is also a fantastic resource for teachers and parents alike with her books. Practice Pie is one of my favorites, a practice app, podcast, and more. She is a force of nature, I feel like, in the music teaching world and the music practice world. And this episode, I'm sharing a smaller chunk of our conversation together from episode 80 that gets right to the heart of the matter about music practice itself. I'll share a few links in the show notes to find her work and the original fuller length interview, and you can go there to find the details or through my website. But here is some practice advice today from Nicola Cantan. So I get the question a lot, how do I get my child to want to practice? So I would love, because that's kind of related to what you were just saying. What advice do you give to families who are in that position where they think, my child wants to play, I teach violin, you teach piano, but my child wants to play their instrument, but then I have to, make them practice or remind them to practice. And there's a frustration there. So what is your advice, or how do you talk about that with families?
Yeah, what is want? Not to get existential on you, but want for a child is a very different thing. And sometimes what parents interpret as not wanting to practice is not wanting to practice right now. One of the biggest issues that comes up now is they don't want to practice right now, even though you agreed to it beforehand and they said they were going to, because right now they're on an iPad. Or right now they're in the middle of something else. It could be anything. They could be painting a painting. But the screens are the biggest culprit for this. The practice ends up being scheduled after some kind of screen time. And they're just not in the right mindset. Mm-hmm. And they don't have the adult brains that we have. They're not able to look ahead in that way. They're not able to sort of regulate themselves, as you were talking about before. So I think that's the first thing, is to be aware of what it means to want to practice. And then the second thing is, if it's not a question mark, they won't not want to practice either, in most cases. Like, if it becomes a steady routine and we keep practice as easy as possible in the beginning, that usually solves itself. It's when it's a question mark and when we're constantly saying, oh, should we do some practice today, essentially in our own adult head, that it becomes something they know they can get out of, or something they know isn't a given each day. So, I mean, the old adage we come back to all the time is the brushing the teeth thing, right? Or homework or whatever. These things aren't optional, and kids know they aren't optional. So for the most part, they just do them. Right. What makes them want to practice, though, if we were really asking that question, I think it depends on their age. But if they are younger, what will really make them want to practice is if you make it quality time with you, the parent. And I think parents underestimate. Maybe sometimes kids don't always show how much it means that their parent is spending that time with them. But if you do it consistently, I've seen the difference that makes to the child and what they associate the instrument with. Let's say if they're under 10, their parent simply sitting beside them and making this a positive time that they spend together every day can make a huge difference.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. I think that parent involvement is really helpful. And just knowing, like, we're going to make this positive and a quality time with each other. I have had parents come back and say, oh, now this is our favorite time of the day because, there's siblings and there's like a special one-on-one time, and it's, become a favorite thing that we do together. And it takes a while to get there sometimes because it's different than what we do in other activities in our kids' lives.
Yeah. But it can become that. And I've seen that again and again myself too, where parents realize, oh, actually, this is this quality one-on-one time that that my child, yeah, there might be siblings or there might be other things going on, but if they can really build it into the routine, every day before dinner or whatever it is, they sit down and practice together, it can start to become this really lovely thing. But if you send them off to Siberia to practice, if they're sent out, their instrument is in their room and that's where they're supposed to practice because everyone else wants to watch TV. I mean, you're setting yourself up for heartache because
Right.
they're lonely. They've been sent off to their room, which, in some cases might sometimes be a punishment. And now practice is put in that category. And then, yeah, there's all sorts of complications there. But
Yeah. Yeah, practicing can be very isolating, or lonely, perhaps. And even just the parent presence, if you're not a musician yourself and you're a parent listening or a family member listening who supports a musician, you don't have to know even the musical things going on in fine detail. It's just that you're there for your child and they know they're not in it alone. And being an encourager really goes
yeah.
far. Yeah, I love some of those thoughts about, how do we get our kids to want to practice? And I think I talk to a lot of professional musicians who even say there are days where I don't want to practice, but it's part, like you say, it's part of my routine. I love the feeling like exercise, like after I've practiced, to feel like I accomplished something. But getting started, because we're sometimes focused on other things and thinking about other things, can be the hardest part. So, some good advice if people are having that struggle with their child, it might be, what are they doing beforehand? Could we put screen time after? An invitation to think about, could the screen time come after the practice? Some of those things can really help.
Yeah, could the screen time come after the practice and could the snack come before the practice? That would be the other one. The other big culprit. Same thing for lessons, when kids come into a lesson and they've just had, for whatever reason, like depending on when their lesson is, it's on a Saturday morning or something. So this is when they're allowed to play their video game. They've just done that and they've not had anything to eat, and then they arrive at the lesson. They're just not in the right
Hmm.
frame of mind. So,
Yeah,
yeah, it's a
taking care
big
of the
factor.
biological needs. Use the restroom, drink some water. I think all those physical things. Sometimes for me, my students, it's the one time or the time in the day where they just calm their body in order to play, and then suddenly they realize all the things that haven't happened yet that they need to, and so we can take care of those things too.
Mm.
And I always like to say to families listening, it is a big job to think about all these factors and put them, support your child in this way, and just really worth it, I would say. But I want to acknowledge it's a lot to think about, and thinking about the big picture, why we're doing it, and what we want our child to have long term, really, I think helps get us through.
Yeah, it's difficult. I'd say if parents are struggling, the best rule I know from habit formation research and everything is never miss twice. That's one of my favorites. So don't beat yourself up, and it doesn't even have to be, you could make it never miss thrice if you like. But the point is, sometimes because we missed one day, we kind of write off a whole week. We go, forget it. We're not going to achieve our goal if our goal was to practice every single day. So just going a little bit easier on yourself. It does not have to be perfect at all. It just needs to be consistent over time. Keep chipping away at it, and it really does make a difference.
Yeah, I love that, because every day is ideal, but if we feel like we failed because one day doesn't happen, sometimes that's the reality of life. So, yeah, we don't want to just throw up our hands and decide what's the point. Yeah, I love that. Very good. And I think that goes for some things that we might get to in some practices, and then other, we don't get to everything on our list. I would just say to my students, well, then get to that thing tomorrow, next practice. Just don't skip it twice as well. So, really good advice. Well, I know our time is going quickly, and I want to respect your time as well. But if you could share one message to people listening, teachers or families, about supporting young musicians on their journey. Well, it could be something we've already talked about, but what do you think is your message you could leave with people about practice and supporting musicians in their lives?
There's so much.
Of course.
There's so much I could say. But I think the main thing I would come back to that we touched on briefly is the long game. Too often we're so focused on, and I get why it happens. There's so many kid activities now, and there's so much that you could be doing. So parents will often want to try things out for a few months or whatever. And they'll do that with ballet, and they'll do that with football, and they'll do that with piano or violin or whatever the case may be. But it really does have to be a long-term commitment, and that should be your focus on how can I make this enjoyable enough and sustainable enough that we're able to do this for the long term. I'm not saying you have to commit to a decade, when your kid hasn't had a single lesson, but trying to keep your focus on that, and therefore trying to keep your child's focus on the future of what they could be playing and where they're going with music, hopefully exposing them to some experiences of older students as well as professional musicians, and giving them a sense of where it is that they could go so that they can be inspired by that, and exposing them to enough music, enough diverse music in general. And I truly mean that. Like, I'm not saying go listen to all the classical music. Really, lots of different types of music is what is important, so that they have this palette and they can start to find, as they grow older, their own musical taste. But yeah, really just keeping your eye on the long term in music. It doesn't have to mean going on to study music in college or anything like that, but the benefits that your child will get out of sticking with it for the long term are so vast and so needed in this age of technology. I'm not anti-technology, I run a practice app, but now more than ever, kids do need this, what music lessons can provide, which is this necessary need to stick with something, to be resilient, to work hard at hard things, and then what you were describing earlier, to get sort of usefully addicted to that feeling of accomplishment at the end. But you only get that by going through it, getting to the end and going, wow, I can do this piece now, or this technique, or whatever. And I never imagined I could do that. So celebrate those moments as they come up. And eventually it does become self-perpetuating, because that feels so good to work hard at a hard thing and get there in the end.
Yeah, so important. Thank you. I love that reminder to celebrate those wins as they happen, and to know that eventually all of this does get easier for our children. A big thank you to all the parents and music educators out there supporting their students with their music learning and their music practice. What you're doing is so important to build a lifelong experience and love of music in their lives. As we go today, I just want to invite you to join my monthly newsletter. You can get a once-a-month roundup of resources and practice tips and ideas, both from me and from the wider music world. You can sign up for free at suzukitriangle.com/newsletter. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And there's just a couple weeks left to sign up to join my SAA enrichment course, Setting Families Up for Success. If you're a teacher looking for information on that, you can find it on the SAA website or through the link in the show notes as well. So with that today, everyone, I hope you are enjoying this busy, music-filled time of year. I'm wishing you a very great week ahead. Take very good care, everyone.